The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is a biodiverse ecosystem that covers over 1,000 square miles. Creating hundreds of miles of levees, wetlands, and channels, the Delta is the largest freshwater tidal estuary of its kind on the West Coast. With waterways reaching the farthest corners of the state, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is the heart of California. Not many people know what it is. So, what is the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, and what is the history behind it?
Well, the Delta, first of all, it's the largest freshwater delta on the west coast of the the Americas continent, from Alaska all the way down to Argentina. And it's unique in the sense that most river deltas are formed at the ocean. But because of the unique geologic formation of California, where the Coast Range came in after the Sierras, and there was a big trench in between, which is now the Central Valley. The water was impounded east of the ocean, and so the whole delta with normal outflow is fresh water.
You know, I think one of the most important things that makes the delta unique is that it has habitat for a very rich ecosystem, and it's also a very productive ecosystem. Well, I'd like to start with how the delta was formed, which took place approximately 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. And it was formed as the waters of the Central Valley began to recede a little bit, and this produced grounds for marsh plants to start to take hold, which they did, and then this eventually led to this vast system of small, shallow canals, hundreds of canals, that served as the basis for a vast freshwater marsh. And eventually these channels, these channels surrounded smaller islands, again, shallow islands, small islands, and additional marsh plants began to fill in those islands as well. All of these plants began, for thousands of years, these plants grew and decayed, and that process produced some very rich peat soils in the delta.
Well, the delta is important to California for half a dozen or more reasons. For example, it is the hub of our water system. We have the flow from the Sacramento River coming in. We get most of our precipitation in the northern Sierra Nevada. It flows down to the delta through the Sacramento River. We also get precipitation in the southern Sierra Nevada, but less, and it flows north from the San Joaquin River into the delta. Then water flows through the delta to the pumping plants on the south side of the delta, and from there it's moved through aqueducts to the Central Valley in south of the delta, and Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Barbara, and other coastal areas. So water flowing through the delta is really important. The delta is also unique because it has this mixed economy. It has agriculture, it has recreation, and other, tourism, but it has agriculture, recreation as foundations of the economy in the delta. It's a fishery. It's a place where people go boating, and it used to be a lot of small channels. Now it's been channelized, so we have islands, and those islands are where there's agriculture. It's also a place where a lot of infrastructure of the state goes through. We have highways going through the delta to get from the Bay Area to Sacramento or to Northern California. We have railroads going through there. We have electricity power lines. We have natural gas lines. We just have so much infrastructure going through the delta. So it's really a hub for more than just water.
The Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is not only important in its role in replenishing California, but also providing a home to people.
The story is that the Native Americans were here and lived along the rivers in these small tribelets. The Native peoples had a a particular fondness. I mean, when you think about, must have had a lifestyle that seems very supportive of human life and of a particular kind of human life. And they actually thought that this was a paradise that had been created by the animals. They saw creation as happening inside of Diablo, inside of the mountain. The Delta right now, in terms of the people who live there, some do because it's historic. Their families have lived there a long time and they're involved in agriculture. There are people who farmed there for, since the 1850s. So there are people who have historic reasons to be there. It's not so much a commuting area. There's also people, there was a period starting really with the Prohibition in the United States, where people would go up the Delta to escape. And there was a time when there were a lot of hotels and bars that would serve liquor up there. So people would go there on a weekend to get away from it all. And there's still some get away from it all places, a sense of escape. So there isn't so much commuting to the Bay Area for work or for other things. Occasionally, yes, but there's a certain kind of anti-metropolitan lifestyle that's cultivated in the Delta.
Brentwood es un pueblo con mucha historia de agricultura. En años de los 80s, 70s, esto era un monstruo en la agricultura. El agua es vida y donde no hay agua, no hay nada. Así sean las plantas como los granados que no necesitan tanta agua y todo, pero no estamos bendecidos porque estamos cerca de aquí del Delta. Estamos muy bendecidos por el agua que recibimos de ahí.
I got to know the Delta as a child. My father was good at teaching us geography and getting us around. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I can't say I knew the Delta well, but I knew where it was when I was standing on top of Mount Diablo, and I knew where I was when I was in it. It's an extremely interesting place, an unusual part of California's unusual geography. We have lots of different ecosystems, but this one is unusual. It's an inland delta, one of the few inland deltas in the whole world, and its ecology is unusual because of that. It also has an extremely interesting history, dating back to the gold rush when it helped supply food and vegetables for the miners, but it was also a place of Chinese immigrants, Japanese immigrants, some Filipina, and this history is all there for us to see in the Delta, but as Rob Short already mentioned, there's just not a lot of understanding of this unusual place right here in our midst in the San Francisco Bay Area.
With such a rich history, culture, and impact, it leaves one to wonder, where will the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta go?
The question is, can the Delta continue to provide all of these different needs that the state depends on from the Delta? Can we still have it as a hub for our water supply, moving water from the Sacramento River in the north to the canals that take it to the San Joaquin Valley in Southern California? Can we still have a recreational ecosystem? Can we have an economy in the state? Can we have a healthy biodiversity and ecosystem in the Delta? Can we continue to provide affordable housing in the Delta? Can we maintain the levees in the Delta? Well, California is a wealthy state and we can do it if we decide it's a priority.
So what we're likely to see with climate change is there's several factors. One is we're likely to see warmer temperatures. We're likely to see more varied precipitation, including more frequent drought. And thirdly, we're likely to see sea level rise. And so regarding the warmer temperatures, that's going to have an adverse effect on the delta system because that's going to warm up in-stream temperatures. That's going to affect both resident species and migratory fish species because, especially with salmon, they need colder water. And so that's going to have an adverse effect on those species.
And the reality of the delta is that it's vulnerable. It's very, very vulnerable. It's teetering on the brink of collapse. It sounds very dramatic, but we are one serious ecological event, such as a long, strong atmospheric river, an earthquake, a dam failure, away from one or more of these islands failing. And it's conceivable that multiple islands could fail at the same time, which could potentially foul our irrigation network and knock out our entire agricultural sector and water distribution to Los Angeles, all in the span of under a month for an unknown amount of time. And if we're comparing it to other disasters in America's history, such as Katrina, it could potentially be an order of magnitude larger than that. So the stakes are very high, and judging from my own ignorance...
I'd say the biggest challenges for the Delta over the next 10 years are figuring out how to manage water resources equitably during extended drought conditions. And salinity is an issue that is inextricable from this issue of water management during drought. So that's one. On the flip side, we also need to be better prepared for water management during flood conditions. Climate change models suggest that flooding is going to become an even bigger concern than drought as we look further ahead to the future, not the next 10 years, but 50 years or so down the road. But already we're seeing trends towards altered rainy seasons, flashier storms that deliver more water in a concentrated period of time. So figuring out how to store that excess precipitation in the form of rain, since we're losing our snow storage, is one of the great challenges that we face. We mentioned harmful algal blooms a little bit earlier in this interview. That is a third challenge that is very much a management priority at this 10-year scale. Figuring out what triggers them in certain places and figuring out how to manage or mitigate those blooms. And then, the other issue that many of our resources agencies exist around is management of threatened and endangered species. Right now, a lot of our management regulations are constructed around Delta smelt and Chinook salmon. There are indicators that other species, such as green sturgeon and longfin smelt, might soon see some regulation associated with maintaining those populations.
It seems to me that the other possibilities are, one of the authors in here wants it to return more to nature. Less agriculture, less tourism, less anything up there, more nature. I think that there is a possibility, there's something just been hatched at federal government, a designation called the Delta Heritage Area. And it seems to me that the area could, particularly if we use the waterways, could foster a lot of tourism without disturbing the land that much. And and some of the ag is okay. It works with the land. So it seems to me that you could still have a fair amount of ag and tourism living there together in perpetuity. That if that gets started and they start thinking about a combination between ag and tourism, and we don't think of it as simply a conveyance to get water to the cities in Southern California and the farms in the south, in the southern Central Valley, that we got a shot. It could be. It is a wonderful area to reconceive the whole 19th and early 20th century. It's still there.
Well, wherever it will go, the Sacramento San-Joaquin Delta remains to be one of the most unique ecosystems in the world. With its waters touching the farthest corners of the state, The Sacramento San Joaquin Delta is the heart of California.